In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, there was a small observation station that floated silently among the stars. It was a lonely place, filled with blinking monitors, humming machines, and scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding the unknown. Among them was Dr. Elena Voss, a xenobiologist known for her curiosity and determination. She spent her days studying signals from distant worlds and her nights staring at the blackness of space, thinking about what might be out there. For decades, stories had spread across the galaxy about a mysterious species that had earned a fearsome reputation. Colonists spoke of entire outposts being destroyed, ships vanishing without a trace, and strange energy readings that no one could explain. Traders whispered tales of encounters so terrifying that they avoided certain regions entirely. Every account painted the species as a terrifying force, one that no one dared challenge. But Dr. Voss had learned to be cautious of stories told through fear. She had seen how myths grew from small incidents, how panic could turn an ordinary event into a legend, and how misunderstandings between species could be catastrophic. She believed that what was often considered dangerous might simply be misunderstood, and she wanted to find the truth. The observation station had been monitoring a cluster of stars where this species was believed to live. For months, Dr. Voss and her team recorded unusual energy pulses and patterns. Some of the pulses were chaotic, some rhythmic, almost like a code. The team had tried to interpret them, but the signals were unlike anything known in the galaxy. They were not messages of destruction, nor signs of aggression, but something different, something that no one had tried to understand fully. One evening, as the station orbited a small icy planet, Dr. Voss noticed a pattern in the signals. It was subtle, almost invisible at first, but it repeated with precision. She ran her calculations again and again, double-checking her instruments. The signals were deliberate. They were intelligent. They were not cries of war. They were attempts at communication. Her colleagues were skeptical at first. Captain Merrick, the station commander, shook his head. "Elena, we've heard the stories. This species has destroyed entire colonies. You really think they're trying to talk to us?" Dr. Voss smiled faintly, a mixture of frustration and excitement. "That's exactly why we need to find out. Fear has shaped every story we've heard. The galaxy has assumed the worst, but assumptions are not evidence." As days passed, the signals grew clearer. Patterns emerged that resembled sequences used in mathematical communication. The pulses were organized, not random. Dr. Voss started to map them, creating charts and models, and soon she realized something remarkable. The species had a complex system of symbols and rhythms. It was a language, one that had been misread as aggression simply because humans had never seen anything like it before. While the team analyzed the signals, stories from across the galaxy kept coming in. Space freighters reported eerie lights on distant planets. Colonies recounted ships that disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Military ships intercepted strange energy bursts. All of these events had been used as evidence that the species was dangerous. Yet, as Dr. Voss studied each report carefully, she noticed patterns. Many attacks were on automated systems or abandoned stations. Many encounters were misinterpreted because no one understood the species' intentions. The scientists began to suspect that fear, more than the species itself, had created the legend. The galaxy had labeled them as a threat before anyone had truly understood them. This realization was both exciting and frightening. Exciting because it meant there was a chance to learn something incredible. Frightening because it meant the galaxy had been judging a whole species based on ignorance. One night, as Dr. Voss worked late in the lab, her instruments picked up something unusual. Unlike the usual pulses, this was a long, continuous signal. It repeated a pattern that seemed almost like a greeting. She ran simulations to see if it could be a natural phenomenon, but nothing matched. Her heart raced as she realized that this was the first real attempt at contact. She called Captain Merrick to her console. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. "This is not random. They are trying to communicate with us, and it's not hostile." The captain stared at the patterns for a long time. So all those stories, maybe they were wrong? Not wrong, Dr. Voss said carefully. Just misunderstood. We have been interpreting everything through the lens of fear. What the galaxy thinks is dangerous may not be dangerous at all. We need to approach this carefully, but we need to approach it. The next few days were filled with preparation. The observation team documented every signal, every pattern, and every pulse. They developed models to translate the sequences into something humans could understand. They debated what the species might look like, how it might think, and what its intentions could be. Every theory was based on evidence, not fear, and slowly, a picture began to emerge. What fascinated Dr. Voss most was the intelligence behind the signals. There was creativity, structure, and even humor hidden in the sequences. It was as if the species was inviting humans to understand them, testing their patience, challenging them to see beyond fear. The more she studied, the more she realized how limited human perception could be. Fear had not only created myths but had prevented the galaxy from learning about a remarkable life form. By the end of the week, the observation station was buzzing with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Dr. Voss prepared a detailed report for the Galactic Council, outlining the evidence that the species was not the mindless destroyers the galaxy believed them to be. She knew it would take time for the galaxy to accept, but she also knew this was the first step toward a greater understanding. The story of the galaxy's most feared species was beginning to change. What had once been a tale of terror was now a puzzle waiting to be solved. Dr. Voss looked out at the stars, feeling a mixture of awe and hope. Somewhere out there, the species waited, not in anger or malice, but with intelligence and curiosity of its own. And for the first time, humanity had a chance to meet them not as victims, but as equals, ready to learn the truth behind the fear. The signals continued to pulse, rhythmic and precise like a heartbeat across the void. Dr. Voss smiled, knowing that the real story was just beginning, and that the galaxy's most feared species might turn out to be its most astonishing discovery. Dr. Elena Voss and her team spent the next days preparing for the journey to the star system, where the mysterious species lived. Their small observation station was filled with excitement, tension, and cautious optimism. Everyone knew that the path ahead was dangerous, not because the species might attack, but because space itself was unpredictable and unforgiving. Nebulae swirled like cosmic storms, asteroids drifted silently yet with deadly potential, and abandoned colonies reminded travelers that even a small mistake could be fatal. Captain Merrick, a seasoned pilot, led the team through simulations of every possible danger. "We can't assume anything," he said. "We have to expect the unexpected. But we can't let fear stop us either. This is what exploration is about." The crew gathered in the control room, studying star charts and trajectories. The species' homeworld was located in a dense cluster of stars, making navigation tricky. Signals from the planet were faint and fragmented, but Dr. Voss had managed to decode them enough to estimate their location. The planet itself seemed almost impossible to reach without careful planning. As the ship left the safety of the observation station, Dr. Voss watched the stars through the observation deck. The blackness of space stretched endlessly, dotted with distant suns. She felt a mix of awe and unease. The galaxy was vast, and in that vastness lived a species that had been misunderstood for generations. The thought that the creatures might not be dangerous but had instead been victims of human fear was thrilling and humbling at the same time. The journey was long and difficult. They passed through swirling nebulae that blocked sensors and threatened to push the ship off course. Meteoroid showers rattled the hull, making every second feel tense. The crew had to work together to adjust trajectories, fix minor damages, and maintain communication with the distant observation station. Each challenge reminded them that space itself was as unpredictable as the species they were seeking. Despite the hardships, the signals from the species continued to guide them. Unlike before, these signals seemed to grow clearer as they approached the system. Patterns repeated more frequently, almost like a welcome or an invitation. Dr. Voss spent hours analyzing the pulses, trying to understand the logic behind them. She noticed that certain sequences corresponded to energy patterns from the planet's surface. It was as if the species was aware of the humans' journey and was guiding them carefully, making sure they would arrive safely. One evening, as the ship drifted past a dense asteroid belt, the team faced a serious test. A sudden gravitational anomaly pulled the ship toward a massive rock. Alarms blared as the crew worked frantically to correct the course. Sweat ran down Captain Merrick's forehead as he maneuvered the ship with precision. In the control room, Dr. Voss held her breath, her hands clenched over the console. For a tense moment, it seemed the ship would collide with the asteroid. Then, with a shudder and a deep groan of the engines, the ship cleared the danger zone. After that close call, the crew understood something important. They were not just observers, they were part of a delicate process. Every move mattered. Every decision had consequences. And the species they were approaching seemed to understand that, too. The signals were not random. They were careful, deliberate, and intelligent. They were guiding humans, teaching them patience and respect even before the first direct encounter. As they entered the outskirts of the species system, Dr. Voss noticed the first signs of their world. From a distance, it appeared as a glowing sphere surrounded by strange, shimmering clouds. The planet's surface emitted a faint, rhythmic pulse of light that matched the patterns in the species' signals. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and unlike anything humans had ever seen. She could not help but smile. After years of fear and misunderstanding, she was about to witness the truth firsthand. The closer they got, the more complex the signals became. Dr. Voss realized that the species was communicating in a form of light and energy rather than sound. They were using flashes, colors, and patterns to convey information. What humans had once mistaken for aggression, erratic flashes of light, near abandoned ships, was actually a sophisticated method of signaling or warning, not attacking. The species had a language that humans simply did not understand. The crew began to record everything meticulously. Every pulse, every change in color, every rhythm was documented and analyzed. Dr. Voss worked tirelessly, translating patterns into a format humans could interpret. She discovered subtle repetitions that suggested the species had a form of social hierarchy, intelligence, and even humor. It was not a language of hostility. It was a language of life. One day, the signals became even more intricate. The species seemed to project images through energy pulses, showing abstract representations of their world. Towering crystalline structures glimmered in the patterns. Bioluminescent forests sparkled, and flowing rivers of light moved across the planet's surface. The humans could not fully understand the details, but they sensed the meaning. The species was intelligent, peaceful, and aware of the humans' approach. Captain Merrick gathered the crew in the observation room. "We've prepared for every scenario," he said, "but remember, what we see may not be what we think. They are not what the galaxy feared. They are something entirely different. Stay alert, but stay open." Dr. Voss nodded, feeling a deep sense of anticipation. They were on the edge of discovery, and every moment brought them closer to the truth. The journey itself had taught them patience, careful observation, and respect for the unknown. Now the next step, first contact, was within reach. As the ship entered the inner orbit of the planet, the signals pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat. Dr. Voss realized that the species was aware of them in real time, responding to their movements, adjusting the signals to communicate more clearly. It was not a threat, it was guidance. It was an invitation to understand, to learn, to witness a civilization that had long been misjudged. That night, the crew gathered in silence, staring at the glowing planet below. For the first time, fear was replaced by curiosity and wonder. The galaxy's most feared species was no longer a mystery wrapped in terror. They were an enigma waiting to be understood. And the humans were ready to step into the unknown, guided by patience, respect, and the realization that sometimes the truth was far more remarkable than the myths built around it. The journey had been long, difficult, and filled with uncertainty, but it had also been enlightening. Dr. Voss knew that what lay ahead would challenge their perceptions even further, but she was ready. The signals continued to pulse, rhythmic and deliberate, a silent promise that the real story was just beginning. The galaxy's most feared species was waiting, and this time humans were coming with open minds, ready to learn, not fight. After weeks of careful navigation, the human ship finally approached the planet's surface. From orbit, the world looked unlike any other the galaxy had ever seen. Glowing rivers of energy flowed across the landscape, weaving through forests of luminous plants that shimmered in colors the human eye had never imagined. Towering crystal structures reflected the light, creating a kaleidoscope effect that made the planet seem alive. The crew was in awe, unable to believe the beauty surrounding them. Dr. Elena Voss was the first to break the silence. "It's incredible," she whispered, her eyes wide as she scanned the readings. "This civilization, it's thriving. It's not what anyone expected." The species itself was cautious, observing from a distance. From orbit, humans could see movements in the glowing forests, shapes that shifted, formed patterns, and pulsed with light. It was clear that the beings were aware of the newcomers and were studying them just as carefully as the humans studied them. Dr. Voss noted every signal, every pulse of energy, realizing that each change represented a complex thought or emotion. Captain Marek gave the order to lower the ship into the upper atmosphere. The descent was tense. The planet's environment was extreme, with shifting energy currents and fluctuating gravitational fields. But the species seemed to guide them, subtly adjusting signals so the humans could navigate safely. Every flash and pulse was a sign of awareness, a reminder that this was a world where observation and communication were vital for survival. When the ship finally landed on a solid plateau, the crew could see the species more clearly. They were unlike anything humans had imagined. Their forms were tall and elegant, composed of flexible crystalline structures that refracted light, giving them a shimmering, almost ethereal appearance. They had no facial features as humans understood them, yet their emotions were expressed through changes in color, intensity, and rhythm. Each pulse conveyed meaning, and it quickly became apparent that the species was highly intelligent and social. Initial contact was delicate. The humans approached slowly, transmitting signals in the patterns they had decoded. At first, the species remained still, observing. A sudden display of rapid lights made the crew tense, fearing aggression, but Dr. Voss recognized the pattern as a form of communication. A test, not an attack. She instructed the team to respond carefully, matching the rhythm and intensity of the flashes. Minutes passed like hours, each movement deliberate, each signal carefully chosen. Slowly, the species mirrored the humans' patterns and a basic understanding began to form. What had once been feared as aggressive displays were actually a sophisticated language, a way to convey caution, curiosity, and even humor. The realization hit the crew like a wave. All the stories of terror were based on misinterpretation. The species had never been hostile. It had only been communicating in a way humans had not understood. Dr. Voss led the effort to decode more complex messages. The species projected sequences that resembled their world: crystalline cities, bioluminescent forests, and flowing energy rivers. Each projection was rich with detail, showing how they lived in harmony with their planet. Humans realized that what had seemed chaotic or dangerous was actually a highly organized society, with advanced technology adapted to extreme environmental conditions. The crew walked cautiously among the species, careful not to disrupt their environment. Every interaction was a lesson in respect and observation. The species did not touch or interfere, but their energy pulses guided the humans, suggesting safe paths and areas of interest. It was clear that cooperation, patience, and understanding were essential to interacting with them. One remarkable discovery was their method of communication with each other. The species could convey multiple layers of information at once: emotions, intentions, and practical information, through subtle shifts in light and energy. Humans had never encountered a language so sophisticated. Dr. Voss realized that this species' intelligence was not just in problem-solving but in social understanding, empathy, and collaboration. During the first day of interaction, a small incident occurred that tested the humans' perception. A sudden burst of bright light made the crew duck in alarm, but Dr. Voss quickly analyzed the sequence and recognized it as a form of greeting, a display meant to signal trust rather than danger. The species' intent was not to intimidate but to communicate readiness and openness. Relief spread through the crew, replaced by admiration for the creature's intelligence and subtlety. As the humans continued to interact, the species began showing them more of their world. Crystalline structures served as living spaces, reflecting light to regulate temperature and energy flow. Bioluminescent plants produced both food and medicine, creating a self-sustaining environment. The species demonstrated advanced engineering and problem-solving, but always with consideration for the planet's ecosystem. The humans realized that their fear had been built not on the species' actions, but on human misunderstanding and assumptions. Even the history of the species became apparent through energy projections. They had faced environmental challenges, far greater than any humans had experienced, yet they survived through cooperation, innovation, and mutual respect. Every movement, every pulse of light conveyed a story of resilience rather than aggression. Humans began to see them as teachers, offering lessons about intelligence, society, and coexistence. By the end of the first week, the crew had developed a basic but meaningful method of communication. Dr. Voss could now ask simple questions, and the species would respond with sequences of pulses and colors that conveyed clear answers. The initial fear of hostility had been completely replaced by fascination and admiration. The so-called most feared species in the galaxy was not violent, destructive, or cruel. It was intelligent, sophisticated, and peaceful, misunderstood for centuries because humans had feared what they did not understand. Captain Merrick gathered the crew in the observation room, looking at the glowing forms of the species interacting with their environment. "We came here expecting danger," he said quietly. "Instead, we've found a civilization full of wisdom, harmony, and understanding. And I think we're just scratching the surface of what they can teach us." Dr. Voss nodded, her eyes reflecting the shimmering light. "We've always feared what we didn't understand. But now we see that intelligence comes in many forms and understanding requires patience, observation, and humility. The galaxy has been wrong about them for centuries. The real story is far more remarkable than any legend." That night, as the humans prepared to rest in their temporary quarters, the species projected a final pattern for the day, a pulsating light sequence that resembled a welcoming gesture. It was gentle, rhythmic, and beautiful, a symbol of trust and connection. Dr. Voss watched it with awe, realizing that this was the beginning of a relationship that could change the way the galaxy thought about fear, intelligence, and life itself. The humans had arrived with caution, but they were leaving the day with wonder. The planet and its inhabitants were teaching them that what is feared is not always dangerous and what is unknown is not always threatening. In the heart of the galaxy, the most feared species had revealed themselves not as monsters, but as teachers, guides, and examples of life, thriving in ways humans had never imagined. After several days of careful observation, the humans began to move more freely among the species. The initial tension of first contact had faded, replaced by curiosity, respect, and a sense of wonder. Dr. Elena Voss led the crew as they explored the planet under the guidance of the species' energy signals. Every step was a lesson, every interaction an opportunity to learn. The humans soon realized that the species lived in perfect harmony with their environment. Their crystalline structures were not just buildings, they were living systems, absorbing energy from the planet and redistributing it to maintain balance. The forests of bioluminescent plants were carefully arranged to provide food, medicine, and light, without harming the ecosystem. It was a civilization that had mastered the art of coexistence, blending intelligence, creativity, and environmental stewardship in ways humans had never seen. Communication remained a challenge, but progress was remarkable. Dr. Voss and her team had learned to interpret the species' pulses of light and energy. They discovered that different colors and rhythms conveyed emotion, intention, and even abstract concepts. The species could express curiosity, joy, caution, and humor, all without a single sound. Humans, in turn, learned to respond with carefully crafted energy signals, a process that required patience, observation, and attention to detail. Through these exchanges, humans began to understand the society of the species. They were highly social, working together in groups to maintain the environment, solve problems, and care for one another. Decisions were made collectively, not through force or dominance, but through mutual understanding and respect. Even conflicts were handled with subtle communication and compromise rather than aggression. The humans marveled at the sophistication and intelligence displayed in every interaction. One day, Dr. Voss and a small team were invited to witness a gathering in a vast, crystalline structure. It was unlike anything humans had experienced. Light. Pulses traveled across the walls, floors, and ceilings, conveying messages, music, and patterns of movement. The humans could sense the emotions and thoughts of the species through the rhythm and intensity of the lights. It was an immersive experience, teaching them lessons about cooperation, empathy, and the depth of intelligence. Captain Merrick was equally fascinated. "We came thinking we were meeting monsters," he said quietly to Dr. Voss as they observed the gathering. "Instead, we're learning from one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It's humbling." The humans began sharing their own knowledge as well. They showed the species their technology, space travel methods, and maps of the galaxy. The species responded with curiosity, absorbing information and demonstrating their own unique approaches to problem solving. For example, they had developed energy-based tools that could repair damaged structures instantly, a method humans had never imagined. Their science was integrated with art, culture, and environment in ways that made humans rethink their own approach to technology. Cultural exchange became the heart of this new relationship. Humans learned that fear and misunderstanding had shaped their perceptions for centuries. The species had never been aggressive. Humans had simply misinterpreted signals and behavior. Every display of light that had once been seen as a threat was actually a sophisticated system of communication, a way to express caution, share information, or protect their community without causing harm. Dr. Voss recorded every observation meticulously, preparing to send reports back to the Galactic Council. She knew that this knowledge could change the galaxy's perception of the species completely. For centuries, fear had dominated the story, but now humans had the chance to share a new narrative, one of understanding, respect, and the power of observation over assumption. One evening, the humans and the species participated in a shared activity that bridged the gap between their worlds. Using light and energy signals, they collaborated to create a pattern that represented both civilizations. It was a moment of connection, a silent celebration of curiosity and trust. The humans felt a profound sense of respect for the species, intelligence, creativity, and harmony with their environment. Dr. Voss realized that the species had lessons not just about survival, but about perspective. They demonstrated how fear can distort understanding and how careful observation and communication can reveal truth. Humans had assumed the species was violent, yet the reality was completely different. The species had survived and thrived not through force, but through empathy, cooperation, and deep understanding of their world. The days passed quickly as humans and the species continued to learn from each other. Humans adapted to the planet's unique environment, understanding the delicate balance of energy flows, bioluminescent plants, and crystalline structures. The species, in turn, showed ingenuity in ways that challenged human thinking, revealing that intelligence could take forms beyond human imagination. By the end of the first month, the crew had formed a deep bond with the species. Fear had been replaced by respect, and curiosity had grown into admiration. Dr. Voss reflected on the journey so far. The galaxy had long assumed that this species was dangerous, but humans had discovered the truth. Intelligence, empathy, and social sophistication could exist in forms that were completely alien, yet profoundly inspiring. The humans began documenting their experiences, preparing to share them with the rest of the galaxy. Every observation was a revelation. The species, approach to problem solving, their social structures, their art, and their technology all challenged human assumptions. What had been feared for centuries was now a source of learning, a symbol of how much humans could gain by approaching the unknown with patience and humility. Captain Merrick spoke during one of the final briefings before the humans prepared to return to orbit. "We came to this planet expecting danger," he said. "What we found is a civilization that embodies everything we should aspire to: cooperation, intelligence, and respect for life. They've taught us more in a few weeks than centuries of fear ever could." Dr. Voss smiled, watching the species interact among themselves. "The galaxy has misunderstood them for generations," she said. "But now we have the chance to change that. What we feared was not dangerous. It was extraordinary." As the humans prepared to send their findings back to the Galactic Council, the species projected one final sequence for the day. It was a combination of light, color, and rhythm that conveyed appreciation and connection. The humans understood the meaning immediately. It was a silent acknowledgement of friendship, trust, and the possibility of future collaboration. The journey of understanding was far from over, but the foundations had been laid. Humans had learned that the galaxy's most feared species was not what anyone thought. They were intelligent, compassionate, and wise, and the lessons they offered extended far beyond their own planet. Fear had been replaced by understanding, and myths had been replaced by truth. For the first time, the humans felt that they were not simply visitors. They were partners in discovery, witnesses to a civilization that could teach the galaxy new ways of thinking about life, intelligence, and coexistence. And with every passing day, the bond between the two species grew stronger, promising a future where fear was no longer the measure of a species, and understanding became the true path to knowledge. After weeks spent learning from the species, the humans prepared to share what they had discovered with the rest of the galaxy. Dr. Elena Voss and her team were filled with anticipation and responsibility. For centuries, myths and fear had shaped the story of this species, painting them as dangerous and terrifying. Now they had the chance to rewrite that story with truth, understanding, and evidence. As the ship left the planet's atmosphere, Dr. Voss reviewed the data they had collected. Every signal, every pulse of light, and every recorded interaction was meticulously documented. The species had not only demonstrated intelligence and creativity, but had also revealed methods of problem-solving and communication that challenged human understanding. Their society was organized, cooperative, and harmonious with their environment, a model of efficiency, empathy, and innovation. Captain Merrick watched the planet fade into the distance. "It's strange," he said quietly. "We came expecting danger, but what we found was extraordinary. I don't think anyone back home will believe this at first." Dr. Voss nodded. "They may not. Fear has been stronger than evidence for centuries. But once they see the data, the images, the sequences of light, once they understand, the galaxy will have to reconsider everything it thought it knew." The journey back to the Galactic Council was filled with planning and preparation. The humans crafted presentations and reports that could convey the complexity of the species' communication and culture. They created visualizations of the energy, patterns, videos of their crystalline cities, and explanations of their sustainable technologies. Everything was designed to replace fear with understanding, showing the galaxy that the so-called most feared species was a civilization worthy of admiration, not terror. When they arrived, Dr. Voss and Captain Merrick were granted an audience with the Council. Representatives from dozens of planets filled the chamber, their faces reflecting curiosity, skepticism, and excitement. Stories of the species' danger had reached every corner of the galaxy, and the Council members were eager to hear whether these tales were true. Dr. Voss began with the data, showing the signals and explaining how they had been misinterpreted for centuries. She demonstrated the complex communication system, highlighting how pulses of light conveyed emotion, intention, and information simultaneously. The Council members were silent, captivated by the patterns and sequences, struggling to reconcile the evidence with the legends they had grown up believing. Next, she shared images and visualizations of the species society. Towering crystalline structures, glowing forests, and flowing energy systems filled the chamber's displays. The council could see the harmony between the species and their environment, their cooperative social structures, and their advanced, problem-solving methods. Dr. Voss emphasized that this civilization had survived and thrived not through aggression, but through intelligence, communication, and empathy. Questions came rapidly from the council members. But what about the reports of attacks on colonies, one asked. How do you explain the disappearances of ships? Dr. Voss answered calmly. Most of those incidents were misinterpretations. The species communicates through energy patterns. When humans observed unusual signals or unexpected movements, they assumed aggression. Many affected ships were automated, abandoned, or in areas where the species was merely defending their territory in ways humans did not understand. There was no hostility toward sentient beings. The council members exchanged looks, some skeptical, others beginning to reconsider their assumptions. Dr. Voss continued, showing the collaborative activities the humans had shared with the species, the creation of joint patterns, learning exercises, and exchanges of knowledge. We have learned from them, she said, and we believe the galaxy can learn as well. What was feared is extraordinary. What was misunderstood is remarkable. As the presentation ended, a hush fell over the council chamber. For decades, fear had dictated policy, trade routes, and exploration strategies. Now, the evidence challenged everything the galaxy believed. The species that had once been labeled as dangerous, uncontrollable, and destructive was in fact intelligent, peaceful, and socially advanced. The response was cautious at first, but gradually, curiosity and excitement replaced skepticism. Delegates asked about further communication, potential alliances, and shared knowledge. Traders expressed interest in learning about the species' technologies, while scientists marveled at the new understanding of communication and intelligence. The galaxy had begun to see the species not as a threat, but as a partner, a teacher, and a marvel of life itself. Dr. Voss reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The humans had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, yet they had persisted. They had approached the species with patience, observation, and respect, and in return they had received trust, knowledge, and insight. The lessons extended far beyond this one encounter. The galaxy itself had the opportunity to rethink its assumptions, challenge its fears, and embrace understanding as a guiding principle. As the humans returned to their ship to prepare for further missions, messages from the species arrived. The energy pulses were no longer simply signals. They carried gratitude and acknowledgement, expressing connection, trust, and anticipation for future collaboration. Dr. Voss watched the patterns with awe. The species had not only accepted the humans but had chosen to engage with them openly, bridging the gap between worlds with intelligence and empathy. Captain Merrick spoke quietly as he reviewed the messages. We've changed the galaxy's perception in a single encounter, and yet there's so much more to learn. This is just the beginning. Dr. Voss smiled. The beginning of understanding, not fear. The galaxy will never look at this species the same way again. And perhaps one day we'll realize that many other legends and fears are built on misunderstanding too. We just need to have the courage to seek the truth. By the time the ship returned to human space, the story of the species had already begun to spread. Reports, visualizations, and messages were shared with scientists, explorers, and governments across dozens of star systems. Slowly, the myth of the most feared species began to fade, replaced by evidence, curiosity, and admiration. Humans realized that fear had often been a barrier to discovery. Misunderstandings had prevented contact, misinterpretation had fueled myths, and assumptions had clouded judgment. Now the galaxy was learning that patience, observation, and respect for the unknown could reveal truths far more remarkable than any legend. Dr. Voss reflected on the lessons learned from the species. Intelligence comes in many forms. Life adapts in ways humans cannot always imagine, and fear often misguides perception. What had been considered the most dangerous beings in the galaxy were, in fact, wise, peaceful, and astonishing. The encounter had rewritten history, challenging every assumption humans had held and offering a model for future interactions with unknown civilizations. The species had taught humans a lesson in humility and understanding. They had shown that fear is often the result of ignorance and that truth requires patience, empathy, and courage. And as the humans looked out at the stars, they realized that the galaxy was filled with possibilities, mysteries, and civilizations waiting to be understood, not feared. The story of the galaxy's most feared species had changed forever. What had once been a tale of terror was now a story of connection, learning, and discovery. Humanity had begun to see that the universe is not only a place of danger, but also a place of incredible beauty, intelligence, and potential. And for the first time in generations, fear had been replaced by curiosity, respect, and the understanding that sometimes the things we fear most are far more extraordinary than we could ever imagine.